God said, watch this alone right now, because this moment was not meant to be shared, not meant to be scrolled past, not meant to be drowned out by noise. This is not entertainment. This is not coincidence. This is a divine interruption. Something has been stirring inside you, something you could not explain, something that woke you up when you should have been sleeping and kept you quiet when you wanted to speak. God said, watch this alone right now, because what is about to meet you here is not for the crowd. It is for your spirit. It is for the hidden place. It is for the part of you that has been strong for everyone else but secretly tired. God is not shouting to the masses in this moment. God is whispering directly to you. And when God whispers, destinies realign. You have been wondering why everything around you went quiet, why the voices faded, why the support thinned out, why the invitations stopped coming. You thought it was rejection. You thought it was delay. You thought something went wrong. But God said, watch this alone right now, because isolation is not punishment. When God is involved, isolation is preparation. There are things God cannot say to you in a crowd, because the crowd would influence your response. There are directions God cannot give you publicly, because fear would interfere. There are instructions that require silence, focus, and surrender. God had to separate you so He could speak to you clearly without interruption. Right now, God is dealing with your inner noise. The questions, the doubts, the memories that keep replaying, the disappointment you learned how to hide. You smile, you function, you keep moving, but inside there has been a quiet battle. God saw it. God heard every unspoken prayer. God counted every tear you wiped away before anyone noticed. And God said, watch this alone right now, because healing does not begin with noise. Healing begins with truth. And the truth is, you have outgrown the season you are trying to survive. What once fit you now feels tight. What once excited you now feels heavy. What once made sense now feels confusing. That is not because you are lost. That is because God is moving you forward. You have been trying to understand everything logically, but God does not move by human logic. God moves by purpose. You keep asking for explanations when God is asking for obedience. You keep asking for clarity when God is asking for trust. You keep asking for signs when God is asking for surrender. God said, watch this alone right now, because the next phase of your life will not be built on answers. It will be built on faith. Not faith that shouts in public, but faith that stands firm in private, where no one is clapping, no one is validating, and no one is watching. There are things you survived that should have broken you. There were moments when the pressure was so heavy that giving up felt reasonable. There were nights when you questioned your worth, your calling, your future. But you are still here, not because you were strong, but because God was faithful. God carried you when you could not carry yourself. God protected you when you did not even know you were in danger. God redirected you when you were about to choose something that would have cost you everything. God said, watch this alone right now, because it is time for you to see your life the way He sees it. Not as a series of failures, but as a testimony in progress. You have been feeling like something is about to change, but you could not explain it. You sensed a shift, a holy restlessness, a dissatisfaction with comfort. That is not anxiety, that is alignment. God is stirring you because stagnation is no longer allowed. You have stayed quiet long enough. You have waited long enough. You have prayed long enough. Now God is preparing you to move, but before you move outward, God must settle things inward. God said, watch this alone right now, because the next step will require a different mindset, a deeper confidence, and a stronger trust than you have ever had before. You do not need everyone to understand what God is doing in your life. In fact, the more people understand it, the less powerful it becomes. God does His deepest work in secrecy. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Transformation happens in silence before it becomes visible. God is working on you where no one can interfere, manipulate, or distract. God said, watch this alone right now, because this is a private appointment. This is a divine recalibration. This is where God realigns your heart with His will. You have been carrying guilt for things God already forgave. You have been replaying mistakes God already erased. You have been punishing yourself for lessons that were meant to teach you, not trap you. God is not holding your past against you. God is using your past to prepare you. Every delay taught you patience. Every rejection taught you discernment. Every loss taught you dependence on God alone. God said, watch this alone right now, because it is time for you to release the weight of yesterday so you can carry the responsibility of tomorrow. There is a new authority being placed on your life. Not authority to dominate others, but authority over fear, authority over doubt, authority over the voice that tells you that you are not enough. God is strengthening your inner man. God is teaching you how to stand without leaning on approval. God is teaching you how to move without needing permission. God said, watch this alone right now, because the season ahead will require boldness. And boldness is born in intimacy with God, not in public opinion. You have been praying for breakthrough, but God has been preparing you for responsibility. Breakthrough without maturity destroys people. Increase without wisdom overwhelms people. Visibility without grounding ruins people. God loves you too much to rush you. God loves you too much to give you what you are not ready to steward. That is why the process felt slow. That is why the door did not open when you wanted it to. God said, watch this alone right now, because delay was protection and silence was training. Look at how far you have come without the support you thought you needed. Look at how much you have grown without the resources you thought were necessary. That was God showing you that He is enough. When everything else fades, God remains. When everyone else leaves, God stays. When plans fail, God prevails. God said, watch this alone right now, because the foundation of your future cannot be people. It must be God. There will be moments ahead when you will need to remember this solitude. Remember this stillness. Remember this quiet confidence. Because God is about to elevate you. And elevation attracts attention. Attention attracts opinions. Opinions attract pressure. But when you are rooted in God, no storm can uproot you. God said, watch this alone right now, because He is anchoring you before He lifts you. You have underestimated how much God trusts you. You thought you were being overlooked, but you are being entrusted. God does not give heavy assignments to weak vessels. God does not give great responsibility to unstable hearts. Everything you endured was proof that God believes in what He placed inside you. God said, watch this alone right now, because you are about to see yourself differently, not as broken, not as delayed, but as chosen and prepared. The silence you feared was actually God clearing the room. The waiting you hated was actually God strengthening your resolve. The loneliness you questioned was actually God drawing you closer. When God wants to do something new, He often removes the familiar. When God wants to speak clearly, He reduces the noise. God said, watch this alone right now, because clarity comes when distractions leave. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. Time with God is never wasted. Every moment you spend seeking, praying, waiting, and trusting is being counted. God does not rush purpose. God unfolds it. And when it unfolds, it will make sense why it could not happen any other way. God said, watch this alone right now, because patience is about to pay off. There is a strength rising in you that does not come from confidence in self, but confidence in God. A calm assurance that no matter what happens, God is in control. A steady peace that does not depend on circumstances. This is the kind of faith that cannot be shaken because it was built in private. God said, watch this alone right now, because He is forming unshakable faith within you. You may not see the full picture yet, but you do not need to. God sees it. You may not understand every step, but you do not have to. God is guiding you. Your responsibility is not to figure it all out. Your responsibility is to stay aligned, stay humble, and stay obedient. God said, watch this alone right now, because surrender is the doorway to your next level. Something is ending and something is beginning. Do not mourn what is leaving if God is the one removing it. Do not cling to what is familiar if God is calling you forward. Trust the wisdom of God more than the comfort of routine. God said, watch this alone right now, because the next chapter requires courage, not comfort. You are about to walk into rooms where your presence will shift atmospheres. You are about to speak words that will awaken hope in others. You are about to carry responsibility that once intimidated you, but will soon fit you perfectly. God said, watch this alone right now, because what He is building in you is bigger than you imagined, deeper than you expected, and stronger than you think. Stay still, stay focused, stay faithful. God is not finished. God is just getting started. What God is doing now is deeper than motivation. It is transformation. God is not merely trying to make you feel encouraged. God is reshaping the way you see life, the way you interpret delay, the way you respond to pressure. For a long time, you measured progress by speed, by visible results, by applause. But God measures progress by alignment. When your heart aligns with His will, when your desires submit to His timing, when your plans bow to His wisdom, that is when real movement begins. God said, watch this alone right now, because He is recalibrating your internal compass so you stop chasing what looks good and start walking toward what is right. You have reached a stage where shallow faith can no longer sustain you. Emotional excitement fades, external validation disappears, and circumstances shift without warning. God is calling you into mature faith, a faith that stands when nothing around you makes sense, a faith that obeys even when the outcome is unclear. This is not the faith that asks, what will I gain? This is the faith that declares God knows what He is doing. God said, watch this alone right now, because the next season will require conviction, not convenience. There is a reason God has been teaching you how to be still. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is mastery. Anyone can react, but it takes strength to respond with wisdom. Anyone can panic, but it takes faith to wait. God is training you to rule over your emotions instead of being ruled by them. When God elevates you, emotional discipline becomes essential. God said, watch this alone right now, because your ability to remain grounded will determine how high you can go. You have learned what it feels like to be misunderstood, to be misjudged, to be overlooked. God allowed it because He wanted to break your dependence on human approval. As long as you need people to agree with you, you will hesitate to obey God. As long as you need applause, you will compromise truth. God said, watch this alone right now, because freedom begins when obedience matters more than opinion. There is also a refining happening in your desires. Some things you once wanted no longer excite you. Some paths you once chased now feel empty. This is not loss, it is clarity. God is purifying your vision so you stop wasting energy on distractions. When desire is refined, focus sharpens. When focus sharpens, movement accelerates. God said, watch this alone right now, because wasted motion is ending and intentional living is beginning. You are learning that strength does not always roar. Sometimes strength whispers, I trust God. Sometimes strength looks like restraint. Sometimes strength looks like silence when you could defend yourself. God is teaching you restraint because power without control is dangerous. Influence without wisdom destroys. God said, watch this alone right now, because He is preparing you to carry weight without being crushed by it. Do not be surprised if God asks you to let go of something you worked hard for. Sometimes effort does not equal assignment. Sometimes you build something with passion, only to discover God never intended it to be permanent. Letting go does not mean failure, it means obedience. God removes what limits you to make room for what expands you. God said, watch this alone right now, because obedience will cost you comfort, but disobedience will cost you destiny. You are also learning discernment. Not everyone who speaks loudly speaks truth. Not every opportunity is divine. Not every open door leads forward. God is sharpening your ability to sense alignment instead of chasing excitement. Discernment protects you from regret. Discernment keeps you focused on purpose. God said, watch this alone right now, because wisdom will save you from battles you never needed it to fight. The pressure you felt was not meant to break you, it was meant to reveal you. Under pressure, character surfaces. Under pressure, priorities are exposed. God allowed the weight so you could see what was truly inside you, and what God saw pleased Him. Resilience, humility, perseverance. God said, watch this alone right now, because He trusts what He has built in you. There will be moments when you feel unqualified, when the assignment feels bigger than your ability, when responsibility feels heavier than your strength. That is not a sign to retreat. It is confirmation that God is involved. God specializes in stretching people beyond their comfort so they lean fully on Him. God said, watch this alone right now, because reliance on God is your greatest advantage. You are stepping into a phase where excuses will no longer work. God has given you enough insight, enough experience, enough growth. Now comes accountability, not condemnation, responsibility. God is calling you to rise above fear, above hesitation, above delay. God said, watch this alone right now, because readiness has arrived. Remember this, God does not rush what He values. If the process took time, it is because the assignment matters. If the shaping was intense, it is because the calling is significant. God does not waste suffering. God transforms it. God said, watch this alone right now, because every struggle is being repurposed into strength. There's also restoration happening in areas you thought were permanently damaged. Confidence is returning, not arrogance, but quiet assurance. Vision is returning, not fantasy, but clarity. Peace is returning, not the absence of problems, but the presence of trust. God said, watch this alone right now, because wholeness is being rebuilt from the inside out. Do not compare your journey to anyone else's. God custom designed your path. Comparison will only distort your gratitude and distract your focus. What God is doing in you requires your full attention. God said, watch this alone right now, because your lane is sacred. You will soon realize that the waiting season did more for you than the movement ever could. Waiting taught you patience. Silence taught you listening. Lack taught you dependence. God said, watch this alone right now, because preparation has already done its work. Stay alert, stay sensitive, stay obedient. God is near, God is active, God is intentional. What you are becoming matters more than what you are achieving. When your character matches your calling, promotion becomes safe. God said, watch this alone right now, because alignment is complete. And when you step forward, step without fear. God goes before you. When you speak, speak with confidence. God stands with you. When resistance comes, remain steady. God fights for you. God said, watch this alone right now, because you are not alone. Never were, never will be. There is a moment when faith stops being a concept and becomes a posture. You no longer ask God to prove Himself. You adjust yourself to what God has already spoken. That moment is arriving now. God is not asking you to feel ready. God is asking you to be willing. Readiness is emotional, but willingness is spiritual. Willingness says, even if I am unsure, God is certain. God said, watch this alone right now, because certainty in God is stronger than confidence in self. You are entering a season where God will speak through inner conviction more than external signs. You will know when to move without needing permission. You will know when to stop without needing explanation. This sensitivity is not accidental. It is cultivated. God has trained your spirit to recognize His guidance. God said, watch this alone right now, because discernment will be your compass when the road ahead looks unfamiliar. Understand this deeply. God is not intimidated by your questions, but God is not moved by your hesitation. Question and as refined faith, hesitation delays obedience. There is a difference between seeking understanding and postponing action. God is inviting you to move even when understanding comes later. Faith is not knowing every step. It is trusting the one who orders them. God said, watch this alone right now, because movement unlocks revelation. There will be times when obedience isolates you further. Not everyone can follow where God is leading you. Some will misunderstand your silence. Some will criticize your restraint. Some will question your choices. Let them. God does not consult the crowd when shaping purpose. God speaks to the willing, not the popular. God said, watch this alone right now, because obedience may cost you association, but it will secure your assignment. You are also learning that favor is not always loud. Sometimes favor looks like protection from opportunities that would have drained you. Sometimes favor looks like closed doors that would have distracted you. Sometimes favor looks like being hidden while others are visible. God said, watch this alone right now, because invisibility can be a gift when God is strengthening your foundation. There is a discipline God is developing in you, the discipline to finish. Many start with passion, but few endure with faith. God is not impressed by how fast you begin. God honors how faithfully you complete. This endurance is being built quietly. God said, watch this alone right now, because perseverance is the mark of trust. You will soon notice that your prayers are changing. You are no longer asking God to remove every challenge. You are asking God to shape your response. You are no longer asking for escape. You are asking for endurance. This shift signals growth. God said, watch this alone right now, because maturity has replaced desperation. God is also teaching you stewardship, how to handle influence, time, resources, and responsibility with wisdom. Small tests prepare you for larger trust. How you manage what is unseen determines what God will release publicly. God said, watch this alone right now, because faithfulness in private governs promotion in due time. There is a calm authority being established in you, not arrogance, not force, authority rooted in alignment with God. When you speak, your words will carry weight because they come from conviction, not impulse. When you act, your actions will be deliberate, not reactive. God said, watch this alone right now, because stability will distinguish you. You may feel the urgency of purpose increasing. Time feels valuable. Distractions feel costly. This is not pressure, it is awareness. God is sharpening your sense of priority. What once consumed your energy will no longer deserve it. God said, watch this alone right now, because focus protects destiny. There will be moments ahead when fear tries to resurface, reminding you of past failures. Do not entertain it. Fear speaks in memories. Faith speaks in promises. God does not define you by where you stumbled, but by where you stood back up. God said, watch this alone right now, because resilience has become part of your identity. You are also learning that waiting on God does not mean inactivity. It means preparation. It means discipline. It means consistency. Every small act of obedience compounds into strength. God said, watch this alone right now, because diligence will sustain what inspiration starts. God is positioning you to be an answer, not just a seeker, an example, not just a follower, a carrier of hope, not a consumer of encouragement. This responsibility is heavy, but you have been shaped for it. God said, watch this alone right now, because what God entrusts to you will impact more than you realize. Do not rush this moment. Let the truth settle. Let conviction deepen. Let surrender solidify. God is not finished speaking. God is not finished shaping. God is not finished leading. This solitude is sacred. This stillness is purposeful. God said, watch this alone right now, because everything you need for what comes next is being formed right here, right now, in the quiet presence of God. God is also awakening you to the power of alignment between belief and action. For a long time you believed correctly but acted cautiously. You trusted God inwardly but hesitated outwardly. That season is closing. Faith that remains hidden eventually weakens, but faith that moves becomes unbreakable. God is calling you to live what you believe without apology. God said, watch this alone right now, because belief without movement will no longer satisfy your spirit. There is a sacred urgency now. Not panic, not rush, but awareness. You can sense that moments matter, conversations matter, choices matter. God is sharpening your understanding that life is not casual when purpose is involved. Every decision either strengthens direction or creates delay. God said, watch this alone right now, because intentional living is replacing passive existence. You are learning that God's guidance often comes as inner restraint before external resistance. Before doors close, conviction speaks. Before mistakes form, warning rises. This sensitivity is a gift. Protect it. Do not override it for convenience or comfort. God said, watch this alone right now, because obedience often whispers before consequences shout. God is also dismantling the illusion that strength means independence. True strength is dependence on God without shame. You were never designed to carry everything alone. When you release control, grace increases. When you admit need, provision flows. God said, watch this alone right now, because humility unlocks help. There will be moments when God asks you to speak when silence feels safer. Moments when God asks you to remain quiet when explanation feels necessary. Obedience will not always feel logical, but it will always be purposeful. God said, watch this alone right now, because trust must outweigh comfort. You are stepping into a deeper understanding of authority, the authority to say no without guilt, to walk away without regret, to stand firm without aggression. This authority comes from knowing who you answer to. When God is your reference point, pressure loses power. God said, watch this alone right now, because clarity of allegiance produces confidence. God is also healing how you see yourself, not through praise, but through truth. You are not defined by what failed, who left, or what hurt. You are defined by what God sustained. The fact that you endured proves that something greater holds you. God said, watch this alone right now, because identity rooted in God cannot be shaken. You will soon realize that many things you prayed to escape were actually shaping tools. Resistance built endurance. Delay built wisdom. Silence built depth. God does not waste experiences, God redeems them. God said, watch this alone right now because nothing you endured was meaningless. There is also a warning wrapped in love. Do not return to what God delivered you from simply because it feels familiar. Familiarity is not safety. Comfort is not calling. God said, watch this alone right now because going backward will cost you peace. Your capacity is expanding. What once overwhelmed you will soon feel manageable. What once intimidated you will soon feel ordinary. Growth often happens so quietly that you do not notice it until you stand in places you once feared. God said, watch this alone right now because you have grown more than you realize. God is teaching you patience without passivity and action without anxiety. This balance will protect you. When you move too fast, you risk pride. When you wait too long, you risk fear. God's timing keeps you centered. God said, watch this alone right now because balance sustains longevity. There will be people who benefit from your obedience without knowing your process. They will see results without seeing the nights you prayed, the doubts you overcame, the discipline you practiced. Do not resent this. Impact is not diminished by invisibility. God said, watch this alone right now because purpose is not measured by recognition. You are also learning the power of consistency. Not intensity that burns out, but faithfulness that endures. God honors steady obedience more than occasional passion. What you do daily shapes what you become permanently. God said, watch this alone right now because discipline protects destiny. God is positioning you to respond differently than before. Where you once reacted emotionally, you will now respond wisely. Where you once rushed, you will now wait. Where you once doubted, you will now trust. This is evidence of growth. God said, watch this alone right now because transformation is already underway. There will be resistance when you step forward, not because you are wrong, but because you are effective. Resistance often confirms direction. Do not interpret opposition as disapproval. God said, watch this alone right now because endurance confirms assignment. You are being prepared to carry influence without losing integrity. Influence reveals character. Integrity sustains it. God is strengthening your inner life so your outer life does not collapse under weight. God said, watch this alone right now because character is the foundation of lasting impact. Let this moment mark a decision, not emotional, not dramatic, settled, a decision to trust God fully, a decision to move when led, a decision to remain faithful even when unseen. God said, watch this alone right now because this is not just encouragement, it is commissioning. Stay sensitive, stay obedient, stay grounded. God is active, God is precise, God is near. What is unfolding now will echo far beyond this moment, far beyond your understanding, far beyond your expectations, all held securely in the wisdom and authority of God. So let this moment seal something within you. Let faith move from inspiration into resolve. Let trust settle deeper than emotion, deeper than circumstance, deeper than fear. You are not standing at the edge of uncertainty. You are standing at the threshold of alignment. God has seen every step, measured every tear, weighed every decision, and nothing has been overlooked. What felt like delay was divine timing. What felt like loss was divine pruning. What felt like silence was divine instruction. God said, watch this alone right now, because this was the moment your spirit needed clarity more than comfort. Walk forward with quiet confidence, not rushed, not hesitant, anchored. You do not need to announce what God is doing. Time will reveal it. You do not need to defend your path. Obedience will justify it. You do not need to fear what lies ahead. God is already there. Carry this truth with you. You are guided. You are prepared. You are sustained. When doubts rise, remember this stillness. When pressure increases, remember this conviction. When doors open, remember who aligned you. God remains faithful. intentional, and present now and always.